Okay, bond value. So much like we saw before, we're taking all the coupon payments, we're adding them up and discounting them at the bond's required rate of return. And so interest, again, most people would call that a coupon payment. So maturity or face value of the bond, and N is the years to maturity. For the most part, we're going to do, well, for all of our calculations on the exam, we will do semi-annual compounding. This is an annual compounding example. The formula, this for an annual, so we take the coupon, multiplied by 1 minus 1 divided by 1 plus the yield to maturity to the n power. So that's n would be the number of years to maturity, and then we divide by the yield to maturity. And that gives us the present value. That's a formula for present value of an annuity. And then we take the maturity of the face value and divide it by 1 plus the yield to the n equal to the number of years. We're going to see an example, more important example, where we do it semi-annually here in a minute. So example here, we've got the Genesco bond with a 10% coupon and a 10% yield, 15 years to maturity. So the coupon rate is 1,000 times 0.1 or 100 multiplied by 1 minus 1 divided by 1 plus the yield to the 15th power, because we're 15 years to maturity. And then 1,000 divided by 1 plus the yield to the 15th power. Since the yield and the coupon are the same, this bond would be trading at par on your calculator. So this again, this is the yield, and then this is the coupon payment based on the coupon rate. So 15 years, so it's 15N, 10 IY. We're calculating PV, so it's 100 payment. That's just 1,000 times 0.1, and then the face value, and we compute IY, and that gives us the value of the bond. For semi-annual, which the vast majority of bonds do so, we would divide the coupon payment by 2, and then we also divide the yield by 2 in the calculation here. Then when we divide the yield by 2, we multiply the number of years by 2. And then same here. So this would be, so for example here, this would be 1 plus 0.1 divided by 2 to the 30th power now, because we're 15 years, 2 times 15. So we're going to see an example of this same bond with here. So the yield is now 8%. We're 14 years to maturity. We're going to calculate semi-annually. So our N is 14 times 2, so that's 28. Our IY is our yield divided by 2, so 8 divided by 2 is 4. We divide the coupon payment by 2, so because it's paid twice a year, so that's 50, and our face value doesn't change. And then we compute PV, and that gives us the price of the bond. The yield is less than the coupon, so this is a premium bond. Yield to maturity is the average rate of return on a bond if it's held to maturity. Example here, suppose you were offered a 10-year 8% coupon with a par value 1,000 and a price of $875. So how do we calculate the yield to maturity? If we look at a formula example here, we would be trying to solve, in this case, we'd be solving for the yield in 40 different times. Much easier to do on your calculator. So we had a 10-year bond, so this is 10 times 2. That's 20. Our price goes here. It's a negative. Our coupon payment is 8%, so 1,000 times 0.08. divided by 2, and that's 40. And then the face value or par amount is 1,000. So we compute IY. We're almost there. This is a semiannual rate, so we have to multiply it by 2 to get the yield to maturity of 10%. So again, yield to maturity is the average rate of return on a bond if it's held to maturity. IY in this case is 5%, is a 6-month rate, so we have to multiply it by 2 to get the yield to maturity. So again, this is YTM for short. So yield to call. So what we do on yield to call, we have to consider the call date and then also the call price. So yield to call is the average rate of return to earned on a bond if it's held until its first call date. So in this case, so the again, it's a pretty ugly looking calculation if you have to do it by hand. It's not. It is actually possible to do, but it's much easier with a graphics calculator if you have one. But on your calculator, yield to call looks like this. So our previous example, suppose that bond can be called in 4 years at a price of 1,080. So this 1,080 becomes the future value. It replaces the par value. And then N, this is 4 times 2, so that's 8. So we compute IY, and this is a semiannual rate, so we multiply it by 2 to get our yield to call of 13.74%. All right, we'll start the next lecture on interest rates and bond values.